Okay guys, so here we're going to propagate our Yacon plant. Now as you can see here, the bottom parts are the rhizomes. Now it's attached to this long dead stem. We don't need any of this, so all I'm simply going to do is just break it off and compost it, and then we'll be left with this lovely crown. As you can see here, each of these yellowy bits are little shoots. This is what we want to keep, so they have like a reddish purpley tinge at the top. So what we'll do is simply put this into some compost in the spring. Once the shoots have emerged and there's a nice little bit of growth, then we'll go in and we'll divide up the plant. So let's get on with that. Alright, see you in a bit. This here is a great specimen to show the differences. So here are the tubers. So this is what you actually eat. So this one's been left in the ground. Obviously I won't be eating this. This is a storage organ for the plant. This is a bit too big, so I can actually take this off like this. This is what you do when you're harvesting it to eat it anyway. And I can leave it with one of these on here. Okay, so no shoots on this part, so no growth will happen here. But if we just look at the shoots here, we can probably count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5 plants we can get out of this. And considering these cost about £12 for 3 shoots with a guarantee that one will actually grow, I think that's quite a save. Alright, let's get cracking. So here, this is the Yacon tuber, so this is something you'll be eating. You can't actually propagate from this, there's no eyes or anything on this, but they can get much bigger than this. So next on my propagation is my Canna. This is a rhizome. You can see here the growth just starting to appear, and again I'll put this in a pot of compost, a little bit of water, and then wait for some growth to appear. And once it's established, so I get a nice bit of top growth and a nice root system forming, I'll then find a space to pop it out. So let's get cracking with that. We'll just rest it on the surface like so, with the tip showing at the top, and just put some compost on top of it. And there we have it, one Canna potted up. So the next on my list of things to propagate are my ochre tubers. Now if you can see here, there are 2 different types here, well in this sense that I have at the moment. Again, what I'll do is I'm simply going to put them in a larger pot of compost together and plant them up, and once they start growing I'll then take them out and start dividing them. But you can see the shoots here starting to come, so I usually take the smaller ones to do this with. Just going to make some holes and just pop it in. Let's fill up some compost. Right, this is another great example of learning plant propagation on the spot. So this is another Yacon crown. Obviously the growth at the top has died back. Now I can feel this just by moving this side to side, that there is some pull here. So what I can simply do is I can just pull it out like this, 2 separate crowns. And it's simply doing the same thing again, removing the dead stuff from the stem, and just putting it in a container of compost. This could actually be my banana plant. So again, I'm going to do the same what I did with the cannas and put it in a pot full of compost and just wait for it to emerge. So backfill around. What I'll do now is give it a tiny bit of water for each one, just to keep it a little bit damp. You don't want it to rot because it's quite cold. So just a tiny bit of water, and that's it. Now, if you can see here, we have this raspberry. We have the raspberry runner that's come into the annual bed. So I've dug around it. You can see there's some roots here. I'm going to use my pruning saw. This soil is pretty fine. There's not any stones really in here. I'm just going to go in and just find out where the roots. There we go. I can have a feel. Okay, so I'm going to come in from this angle with my pruning saw and give it a cut. And there we have a division of our raspberries there. So here we have it, another annual bed dug up. This bed is situated right next to this perennial edible hedgerow, and we've got quite a nice few little finds of plants that we can propagate, including raspberries, daylilies and spring onions and chives. So we'll be dividing those up and planting them in other areas of the site to increase the coverage of the edible perennial hedgerow. Alright, let's get cracking to it. So we've dug out some raspberry runners from our annual bed. Now, raspberries, you can see here, we have two different shoots connected by a root here. So what they do is, raspberries, as they go along, they create these roots that go underneath the soil, and you have shoots that pop up and produce new plants, as it were. And we found this in our annual bed, and we don't want this in our annual bed. We're going to put these in our perennial beds. So what we're going to do now is I'm simply going to propagate these, and all I'm going to do is just rip this part of the root. If I had secateurs, I'd chop them up, but I don't with me, so I just simply rip it. It's fine, and I now have two different plants here, or pieces of plant. And what I'll then do is I shall then pop them into a container of compost, like so, and then backfill with soil. Now what I'll do this for several pieces, 2 or 3 pieces, because this is just going to act as a holding pen, so something that the plants can grow in until I find a spot to plant them out into. So for me to find that spot, I'll have to look around the perennial hedgerow, do some weeding, and find out any good spots to put these newly propagated plants in. So I'll be getting on with that. Right, see you in a bit. So whenever you're doing this propagation, always look that there is enough roots for each of the shoots that you have here. So this is a little shoot here, this white bit. I'm looking around the root, and I'll take a bit off here and a bit off here, so there's a bit of root with that shoot. So always look for some roots to support the shoots. And if there's not enough roots and there's too much plant growth, too much leaf growth, then you can always take away some of the leaves, just to help reduce the demand for water of the plant. Sometimes we're a bit too fragile with plants. Plants can handle quite a bit. This is why I'm doing it this way, as opposed to using secateurs. There we go. 2 new plants there. You can see on this one the shoot's just emerging here. There's no leaf on it yet. So it's incredible. Once you know a few plant propagation techniques, you can save a lot of money. You have it, 3 raspberry propagations that have been cut up, planted together in one pot full of compost. Now usually you would plant one bit into its own pot of compost, let it grow, let the roots go through the soil, take it out the plant pot, then plant it out. But I don't have much compost with me, so at the moment this is just a temporary measure, just to hold on to while I'm waiting for a nice suitable space in the perennial hedgerow. Once I find this, I'll dig a little hole and I'll pop them in due course. So there we go. Because there's leaves showing here, I'll give these a bit more of a watering as compared to the tubers and rhizomes that I planted, because they've got roots and they've got leaves showing, so we'll give them a bit more water. So here we have another crop called a daylily. Now you can actually eat these. I haven't eaten the soil and roots or the tubers yet, so it'll be interesting to see what they taste like, but these have been abandoned and they didn't fare too well where they were grown here. 2 of those factors. So what I'm going to do again, simply put them in soils of pots of compost, and then as I'm weeding the perennial hedgerow, if I find a nice spot that's a bit sunny, I'll put these on the edge of that and then plant them there. So that's all I'm going to do for these that I found. Put it in a pot and wait into the right moment to plant them into the hedgerow. I've noticed there are lots of logs that have been dumped off, and these are great to have on your site to use to help make raised beds, or just have log piles for creeping crawlies and critters to hibernate in that are beneficial to the garden. I like using logs here because it's a way just to make the site look a bit more natural whilst also helping wildlife. So I noticed there are a few logs at the end of the site, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go around, walk up and down a little bit with a wheelbarrow and start collecting them just to get warmed back up before I do a bit more plant propagation. So, see you in a bit. So here, from the edges of the annual bed, I have some bunching onions and some chives. Now what I'm going to do again is simply divide them by just teasing them apart and putting them into some compost, pots of compost, and as I weed the perennial edible hedgerow, I'm then going to plant them in spots where I think they'll do well. So I'm doing a lot of this dividing now because this is the time to do this type of stuff, and once I do the weeding I'll then be able to do the planting. So what we're going to do here with these is just literally just tease them from the bottom here, tease them out like so, like this, and I'm going to get them into small bunches, not singular bunches, just small little bunches to plant up like this, and then pop them into compost like so, and just fill them up, fill around the plant pot like that, give it a nice water, and repeat the process. So I'm going to crack on that, guys, and I shall see you in a bit. Right, as we go into one of the pop-up greenhouses, exciting to see that, see if we can make it out here, that there seems to be a growth shoot in one of my goji berries just here. I can't really get in any closer. That's quite exciting. These are overwintered here, and it's good to see them starting to grow. Okay guys, so it's getting dark, it's getting colder, and it may rain, but today has been a success. I feel it's been quite productive. We've dug one of the annual beds over, a smaller bed, much more of a deeper raised bed as it were, and in doing so we found a lot of raspberry runners, we found spring onions, bunching onions. We've divided them, we've propagated those up, so we've propagated our raspberries up, we've divided the spring onions, the bunching onions, chives, and we've also repotted up the dahlias, and they'll be waiting in the greenhouse for a couple of weeks, 2 to 4 weeks or whatnot. Then they'll be planted out somewhere in the perennial bed once I've weeded out more of it, once we get onto that work. So I'm going to call it day today. I'm going to continue on with a bit of digging. I might plant some onion, some garlic sets that are growing that have been left in the shed. I'll see how it goes, but I'm quite cold, so I need to do something that gets me moving, as it were, because even though I've got quite a few layers on, I'm freezing. So we may see that in this episode, we might see it in the next one, who knows, but I shall see you guys in a bit, and I'll see you when I see you. Okay, take care.